It didn't turn back. It simply looked up for a long while. Those golden eyes, deep and silent like the shadows of winter forest trees, stared straight into the girl's eyes and the bobcat standing beside her. Then it vanished into the forest with its 3 small cubs trailing behind. Ella stood there, her hand gently resting on Blaze's back, feeling that tiny heart beating steadily, like a stream just freed from the ice. She knew they hadn't just saved a wolf, they had returned freedom to a species, and perhaps even hope to humankind itself. And you won't believe it, everything began with a courtroom, where a 13-year-old girl walked in with a wild bobcat to fight the entire legal system of the United States all by herself. This isn't just a story about a rescued animal. It's about a profound bond that transcends species, about trust, and about how nature chooses who becomes family. Come with me. Back to the beginning, to the moment a bobcat walked into a courtroom. No leash, no muzzle, only a pair of eyes that spoke louder than words. And a story that made all of America stop and listen. Snow fell in blinding white across the main street of Helena, Montana, as if the sky were shedding frozen fragments of memory. Large, soft snowflakes settled on the red-tiled roof of the old courthouse, casting a chilling yet solemn beauty that stole the breath. The iron gates creaked open. Winter's biting air swept down the marble hallway. A quiet guard knocked the snow from his boots. His hand was steady on his radio. When he saw a small figure approaching, a girl about 13, with chestnut red hair tied low and gray-blue eyes like early winter fog. She wore a thick coat, but that wasn't what silenced the courtroom. What drew every eye was the creature walking beside her. A bobcat, slender and graceful, its cinnamon coat gleaming beneath the fluorescent lights. Its black-tipped ears twitched slightly. And those amber eyes, they didn't look at anyone, only followed the girl. Guard, murmuring, Is that a real bobcat?" The clerk behind him stammered, "No cage, no leash, no one's holding it." Judge Harold Green, who had presided over courtrooms for more than 35 years, frowned behind his round glasses. He struck his gavel with a thunderous crack. "Order! Wild animals are not allowed in the courtroom. Who's responsible for this?" The girl stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "My name is Ella Morgan. This bobcat's name is Blaze, and it's because of him that I'm here today." The room fell silent. Blaze sat down at Ella's feet. No growl, no hiss. Only a silence that felt like a thinking shadow. Aaron Delgado, representative of the Montana Wildlife Commission, stood up abruptly, voice laced with protest. "Your Honor, this is a serious breach. That is a wild predator. It doesn't belong here. Certainly not as a family member of a child." Blaze tilted his head toward him, not with anger, but with sorrow. Ella gently placed her hand on Blaze's head, stroking his warm spine. "Ella, you think Blaze doesn't belong here, but you didn't see how he curled up beside my dad during the wildfire. My dad shielded him from the flames with his own body. Blaze was the last thing my father left me." Judge Green slowly removed his glasses. His eyes softened. "Who was your father?" "Ella, Dr. Thomas Morgan, wildlife rescue specialist at Glacier Center. He died in the Bitterroot Forest fire 3 months ago." The courtroom turned colder still, as if another layer of frost had swept in. Someone exhaled softly, a breath that tasted of ash and memory. Ella abrió su mochila, pulled out a thick folder, and laid it gently on the old wooden table. Ella, I brought full documentation on Blaze's care. Growth logs, vet examination reports, basic training videos, feeding schedules, and she pulled out a sealed envelope, marked with wax. My mother's last will. The clerk handed the envelope to the judge. Green opened it and read silently. The room was so still, one could hear the rustling of paper and Blaze's faint, trembling breath. Ella, gazing straight at Mr. Delgado. My mother is Dr. Miriam Lynn. She still works at the Glacier Wildlife Research Center. She's the one who taught me how to read the body language of wild cats, how to keep my distance, how to let them choose to trust me. Mr. Delgado, through clenched teeth. You might have been taught some techniques, but no one, not even scientists, can control the wild instincts of a bobcat. Ella's lips curved slightly, not a smile, but regret. Ella, I don't control Blaze. I listen to him. Judge Green. Young lady, can Blaze follow commands? Ella dijo nada. She raised her hand and made a simple signal. Blaze stood, walked a circle around her, then lay down and rolled onto his left side, exactly as trained. The courtroom erupted in astonished murmurs, and then a strange silence, as if something had shifted. Blaze slowly walked toward the prosecutor's table. Under the cold winter lights, he lifted one front paw and gently placed it on the edge of the desk, in front of Mr. Delgado. Ella, softly, Blaze would like to greet you. Mr. Delgado stared at the paw, a large paw covered in thick fur, claws retracted. A gesture unexpectedly polite. Its gaze, not fierce, but patient, as if saying, I'm not a threat, I'm the girl's friend. Would you like to shake hands? The air tightened like a drawn string. Finally, with instinctive caution, Mr. Delgado reached out and lightly touched Blaze's paw. Just a gentle touch, but enough for Blaze to nod slightly, then return to Ella's side. A wave of emotional whispers swept through the courtroom. Judge Green leaned back, removed his glasses, and gently wiped them. Very well, Miss Morgan. Judge Green was just about to issue a decision when, bang! The heavy wooden doors burst open, slamming against the cold stone wall. A gust of freezing wind swept into the courtroom, carrying with it the hurried steps of a police officer, face flushed from the cold and urgency. Officer, panting, voice urgent. Your Honor, there's an incident in the underground parking lot. A wild wolf, possibly injured, has wandered into the lower level. He swallowed hard. People are panicking. It's growling, backed into a corner, snapping at anyone who gets close. Animal control says they'll need at least 30 minutes to arrive. The courtroom instantly fractured into chaos. Chairs toppled. Papers flew. A few women cried out softly, clutching their purses as they rushed toward the rear doors. A man hurriedly pulled his daughter along, hands shaking as he dialed his phone. But in the midst of all that chaos, Blaze rose. No one called him. No one gave a command. Just a subtle shift, like the air itself had changed direction. His black-tipped ears stood tall, straining like antennae picking up a signal. He inhaled deeply, then let out a quiet hiss. not a growl, not a threat. The sound was like a whisper. Small, but clear, like the wind speaking something only he could understand. No one else noticed, but Ella did. She stood up instantly. Blaze turned to her, his gaze not panicked, but focused, understanding. Two beings, one human, one wildcat, looked at each other. No words, but louder than 100 spoken sentences. Ella turned, stepped into the center of the chaotic courtroom. Her voice rang out, sharp as a blade cutting through the fog of panic. "Ella, Your Honor, Blaze can sense the wolf, and I believe we can help." The room froze for a second. Then opposition erupted like a crashing wave. Delgado, shouting, stepping forward. "Absolutely not. No one is allowed down there, especially not a child, and a bobcat that hasn't been legally recognized." He pointed straight at Blaze, who stood still like a living statue. Ella didn't flinch, didn't retreat. She stepped forward, eyes locked on Delgado, then turned toward Judge Green. Her voice now no longer sounded like a child's. It was the voice of someone carrying loss, knowledge, and deep belief. "Ella, my father once said, when animals are hurt, they don't need chains. They need someone who can understand the fear inside their silence." She paused, eyes never leaving the judge. "Ella, give me a chance. Just one. If Blaze is wrong, if we fail, then I'll give up my custody rights forever." The entire courtroom fell into a silence even deeper than the earlier chaos. No one stood, no one shoved, no one spoke. Every eye, including those once filled with doubt, now rested on one man, Judge Harold Green. He leaned back, closed his eyes for a few seconds, as if weighing something no law could measure. Green, opening his eyes, voice deep. "Sheriff, escort Miss Morgan and Blaze to the basement level. Maintain a safe distance. If there's any sign of danger, pull back immediately." Delgado, shouting, "Judge Green, this is reckless insanity." Judge, calm but firm. "Noted, Mr. Delgado. But today, I choose to believe in something that law can't measure by numbers. Trust between two living beings." He looked at Ella, then at Blaze. "Go, Ella. Be careful." The underground parking garage beneath the courthouse was cold and shadowed. Water dripped from the concrete walls. The fluorescent lights flickered like a rhythmic heartbeats. Cold air from the snow above seeped in, mixing with the burnt rubber stench. The smell of fear and primal instinct. A group of police officers and court staff huddled behind a barricade of vehicles, stun guns ready, eyes locked on the far end of the garage, where the light couldn't reach. From within the shadows came a rasping growl. Harsh, ragged, pain-filled. A large coyote-wolf hybrid stood its ground, ash-gray fur matted with blood at one shoulder, body arched, legs trembling from blood loss and cold. Its eyes weren't wild. They were desperate. And then another set of footsteps, light, steady. The garage felt like a surgical theater swallowed by night. Pale beams of light stretching across the rough concrete floor like an operating lamp cast over a patient in crisis. A wild creature, the patient and the doctor, a girl not yet 13. Ella apareció, caminando lentamente, pero no con vacilación. Her boots, heavy with snow, tapped quietly across the silence. Each step steady, like the rhythm of her beating heart. Her thick coat shimmered with a layer of frost, hood fallen down behind her. Her hands didn't shake. Her eyes didn't blink. Blaze walked beside her, silent. His long tail glided over the cool concrete like it was writing invisible sentences into the earth. Far ahead, behind the charred front end of a blackened SUV, the wolf. Its gray coat was ragged with mud and dried blood. One shoulder swollen, deep red like a torn ink blot across a white page. It growled softly, deep in its throat. Not to attack, but to warn. Stay away. I'm not okay, but I still have teeth. Sheriff, whispering into his radio. The girl's out of her mind. Judge Green stood behind, eyes never leaving Ella's steps. His voice was low, firm. Number, she's listening. Ella raised her hand, palm open, not just a signal to stop, but a plea. Please, trust. The officers behind her halted, holding their ground as if they'd just touched the invisible line between the human world and something ancient. Blaze stopped, inhaled deeply. His chest rose and fell. And then he made a sound. Not a growl, not a hiss, but a soft chirrup. A call used only by mother bobcats when summoning their kits from the nest. That sound, like a phrase from a lost language, reached into the place where the wolf was hiding, a fear without a name. The wolf froze. Its torn ears twitched, as if catching a frequency from beyond human sound. Its body tensed, claws scraping the ground, but it didn't growl again. Ella stepped forward. She crouched, carefully opened her backpack, and pulled out a small pouch. Inside was cooked chicken, a reward she had kept for Blaze after each training session. Without a word, Ella tore the meat into small pieces and tossed them one by one, forming a trail, like knocking gently on the locked door of trust. The first piece landed more than 10 paces from her. The second 8, then 6, then 5. The wolf caught the scent. Hunger clenched inside. It let out a faint hiss. One front paw lifted, but settled back down. It looked at Ella, then at Blaze. Its eyes, no longer filled with sheer panic, became a tangled web of inner conflict. I'm starving, but I'm scared. I want to survive, but I don't know who to trust. And then, Blaze stepped forward. He didn't look at Ella, didn't glance at the officers, only at the wolf. He lowered his head, relaxed his shoulders, tail down. A posture of no threat. Then, one slow step at a time. He crossed the invisible line that no human dared step past. The wolf stayed still. Its muscles trembled, not from a will to strike, but from held itself back from fleeing. Blaze moved closer, then sat right in the middle, between worlds, like a priest in a wild cathedral. Ella susurró, casi un sonido. Blaze is saying, he didn't come to bite. He came to understand. The entire garage held its breath. Ella followed Blaze, keeping a careful distance, eyes fixed on the wolf, but her hand lowered, palm open. The universal sign of I carry no weapon. Ella, in a voice only the wolf could hear. No one here is hunting you. We're all creatures left behind after the wildfire. Blaze lost his mother. I lost my father. You lost blood. But not hope. The wolf looked at Blaze who now sat quietly, head slightly raised, his eyes are calm. Not threatening, not claiming space, just still, like a mirrored reflection. Then, the wolf took a step, and another. It ate the first piece of meat, still watching Blaze, still watching Ella. The support team behind them began to tear up. Delgado, whispering, "What the hell is happening?" Dr. Rachel Lynn, just arriving, breathless. It's not a miracle. It's empathy beyond language. The kind humanity forgot when it stood behind fences and loaded guns. Ella se bajó lentamente, sin hacer un solo sonido innecesario. The concrete was ice cold beneath her, but she knelt, right there, exactly 5 steps from the wolf. She set her knees down gently, as if not to break the thin thread stretched between life and primal survival. Her breath formed a pale mist, mixing with the cold and an invisible promise. "I won't hurt you. I just want you to hurt less." Her voice rose, so soft only the wolf could hear, but enough to hush everyone else around. "Ella, you're in pain, and you have the right to be afraid. I'm not here to prove anything. I don't need you to trust me. Just trust Blaze." She opened her backpack very slowly. Every zipper made a sharp metallic sound, but her hands didn't tremble out of fear, only from the weight of this moment, too precious for any mistake. She pulled out a first aid kit. Saline, gauze, anti-inflammatory ointment, bandages. All old, but clean, as if she'd been saving them for the one day they'd finally be needed for the right reason. Blaze let out a soft meow. Not high, not sharp. Just the gentle call of a mother cat to her kittens on a snowy night. Then he slowly approached the wolf. Each step is like walking over fragile ice between 2 worlds. He didn't touch, didn't stare, just sat right beside the wolf and looked away as if to say, "You have full control. I'm here if you need me." The wolf let out a dry whimper, a sound so hoarse it resembled the cry of someone whose throat had been scorched by sun and silence. But it didn't run, didn't growl, didn't bite. It lowered its head onto the cold ground, eyes half open. Then slowly turned, revealing its wounded shoulder. Not entirely, just a part. But in the wild, that alone was a declaration of surrender, of trust. Ella stopped breathing for a moment. Her heart pounded so fiercely it might explode. But her hands remained still, like a midnight lake. She leaned down, soaked a piece of gauze in saline, touched the wound. A deep gash, likely from a territorial fight. The wolf flinched once. Blaze tilted his head gently and released a low, soothing sound. Not quite a purr, but something ancestral. A form of feline language only they understood. And then, the wolf lay still. Ella limpió el sangre seca, wrapped the wound, smoothed the bandages, and placed the final strip as if sealing hope. Onto a door long closed. She didn't cry, but her eyes were wet. Not from pity, but from the quiet knowledge that this moment would never come again. 20 minutes passed. No one said a word. Not the police, Not the press, not the forensic team, not the lawyers. No one dared interfere, because they all knew they were witnessing something no textbook had ever defined. When Ella placed the final piece of bandage, she exhaled, her breath soft as winter mist at dawn. The wolf remained where it was, eyes half closed, like a fallen warrior who'd finally found a crevice to breathe in amid the battlefield. Ella slowly stood, brushed off her knees, lifted her head. She looked straight at Judge Green and Mr. Delgado, who had stood frozen this entire time like a stone statue. Ella, voice steady but low. Blaze is not a pet. He's a bridge. If it weren't for him, none of us could have crossed the fear that wolf was screaming. Behind her, Judge Green turned to Mr. Delgado. His eyes were still fixed on the wolf lying peacefully beside Blaze like two pieces of a story no one had finished writing. Green, softly, like a confession. Do you still believe this is just a wild animal? 3 days later, the Montana sky turned blue again after a fresh fall of snow. The old pines outside the courthouse, now draped in white as if wearing mourning veils. For everything outdated, the courtroom that morning didn't feel like before. No more skeptical whispers, no more impatient chair creaks. No more doubtful stares were aimed at the girl. Only silence, waiting, not out of fear, but hope. Ella sat in the front row, her hands gently folded on her lap. Blaze curled beneath her seat, head resting on his front paws, ears perked slightly, as if still listening to everything around him. Her rough brown coat still held traces of snow and a faint scent of burnt forest grass, a scent that time could never erase. From those who have known loss, the rear doors opened. Judge Green entered. In his hand, a thin folder and a wrinkled letter yellowed by time. His gaze was no longer stern, but the gaze of a man who had witnessed something that forced him to reevaluate an entire worldview built over 40 years on the bench. He stepped to the bench. Saturday struck the gavel, not loudly, but firm and deep, like the heartbeat of everyone present. Green, voice slow, heavy with depth. Court is now in session. He looked around the room, slowly, at each person, as if to confirm they were truly here for this moment, not just in body, but in spirit. His gaze paused on Mr. Delgado, the man who had once opposed everything, who had demanded that Blaze be handled as a biological threat. Green, before me today, this is no longer a case about guardianship between a human and a wild creature. This is a bigger question. Do we still have the courage to trust what the law hasn't yet written down, but our hearts have long known? Delgado stood slowly. Gone was the coldness of a bureaucrat. Gone was the voice that once spoke from above. Only a man remained, removing the hard armor of logic. Delgado, voice hoarse, sincere. Your Honor, I came here today to oppose. But after what I've seen, I have nothing left to object to. Ella Morgan. He paused, as if swallowing something bitter in his throat. I never thought I'd say this, but sometimes the creatures we call wild are the ones who teach us how to live gently. A stillness spread through the courtroom. No applause, no movement, only understanding. Rippling out, like light breaking through ice. Green placed the folder down, pulled out a page, clipped in place with a worn wooden fastener. It was the handwritten letter from Ella's mother, written before she passed, left at the rescue center. Green, his voice slow, trembling slightly. This is the most important thing. I've never read in a case like this. A mother once wrote, "My daughter doesn't need to learn how to love nature. She was born as part of it." No one breathed. No one blinked. The girl understands a language the modern world is slowly forgetting, the language of instinctive compassion. Green set the letter down, removed his glasses, lifted his head. Green. In the case of Ella Morgan versus the Montana Wildlife Commission, this court hereby rules: Miss Ella Morgan is granted permission to care for and keep Blaze, the Bobcat, under the provisions of a special wildlife guardian license, under the supervision of Dr. Rachel Lynn and the Glacier Wildlife Center. 1 second, 2, 3. Then, applause erupted. Not like a victory cheer, but like the sudden breaking open of a heart that had just been forgiven. Blaze lifted his head. Not afraid, not growling, simply stood and stepped into the center aisle, as if he understood I've just been acknowledged by the human world as rightfully part of it. Dr. Rachel Lynn stepped forward, slowly, and then knelt on one knee before Ella. Rachel, eyes wet. "You're not just a child who knows animals. You're someone who made us stop to listen to nature. Not to tame it, but to learn how to respect it." A few weeks later, at Glacier Center, as the snow began to melt and the forest returned to its first shade of green, a new program was launched, its name Wild Within Reach. Not a name given by a scientist, but one chosen by a girl who once sat across from the entire legal system just to protect a wild creature. Not for herself, but for the world. Special instructor, Ella Morgan, 13 años. Not a scientist, not a veterinarian, just a child who knew how to listen to what grown-ups had long forgotten. Special companion, Blaze Dash, no longer the controversial Bobcat, but now the living emblem of trust between humans and the wilderness. Every afternoon, Ella led groups of children through groves of ancient pine. Blaze walked ahead, quiet, noble, and free, like a guide who needed no words. One day, as the group paused by the stream, a soft howl echoed from the distant forest. It wasn't long. It wasn't threatening. It was a reminder. It was that wolf. Blaze paused. He turned toward the sound. Didn't bark, didn't growl. Just stared for a long time, as if within that look was something deeper than instinct. Perhaps a farewell. Ella placed her hand gently on Blaze's shoulder and smiled. Not brightly, but quietly, like a late sunbeam slipping through snowy trees. Ella, susurrando. He's saying thank you. The group fell silent. No one asked a thing, because some things are meant to be felt, not explained. The final narration echoes, like the closing line of a documentary that was real and lived. Sometimes, to change the world, you don't need power or a loud voice. Just a pair of eyes that know how to listen, and a heart that isn't afraid to love.